Hello, veteran outdoorsman here, Dave, and I'm going to show you my favorite way to fish for bass. Let me get this real quick. This is my absolute favorite way to catch bass, and it probably comes from when I was a young boy. My dad fished some, he was a member of BASS. He fished some small tournaments in Florida. Florida, and then down into southern Georgia and Alabama, I believe. Fished a lot on the Navy bases we were stationed on at the time. And Dad always liked, still does, to throw a Texas rigged plastic worm. Now, he preferred a 7.5-inch culprit ribbon tail. Throw a 6-inch sometimes. That's not typically what I prefer, but the technique is the same, just use a different lure. But my favorite way to catch bass is a Texas rigged soft plastic. Now, it can be a 4-inch trick worm like this, or finesse worm, sorry. It can be a trick worm, 6-7-inch worm, similar design to this. It can be a 6, 7, 8-inch, 10-inch ribbon tail. Can be a baby brush hog, full-size brush hog, lizard, whatever, crawl. The old crawl worms, I loved them, wish they still made them. But the crawl pappy's similar, it's a little shorter, but a fatter body. But some sort of soft plastic Texas rig is my favorite way to fish. And we're going to go in to how to fish it. Now, I'm not going to go into knots. And I'm not even really going to go into how you rig it on the hook, because a lot of people like different things different ways. I prefer the Palomar knot. I use that for everything. And I think it's called the Palomar. I may be wrong. But it's basically you double your line up, you run it through, you make an overhand with it, run the loop, run your hook or lure through the loop, snug everything up. That is the strongest knot I've ever found. I have never had one pull loose. I have broken fresh line, but I've never had that knot come loose. I can't say that for other knots. But this is how I'm going to start. First thing I'm going to run up the line is going to be bullet sinker nose first. Now I'm using mono. You may want to use fluorocarbon, braid, etc. I'm using 12-pound mono. But 1/8-ounce bullet sinker. I use 8 3/16 a lot. That's what I use the most. I rarely go over a quarter. If I'm flipping, pitching in heavy cover, I may go up to 3/8, maybe even 1/2 ounce. But a lot of times you'll see me flipping and pitching in this light weight. But typically I'm just casting and slowly bouncing it back. I like 8 3/16. Next, use either a glass or plastic bead. This does a couple of things. It protects your knot from your sinker banging on it all the time. It gives a little extra color. Red's an attractive color to fish. They like blood. Red's an attractive color to fish. Gives a little extra noise. Not sure if you can hear that, but it clicks back and forth. Gives a little noise. Then I'm going to take a small swivel, and I'm just going to slide it down the line. Now, I did not come up with this, and I'm going to give credit where credit is due. A very good fisherman and also a YouTuber, Roland Martin. The probably the winningest bass fisherman out there, tournament-wise. Won all sorts of tournaments, runs fishing businesses throughout, Florida, etc. Great fisherman. I watched a video of his and I saw that and I thought, I gotta try that. It's awesome. And you're gonna see what it's for in a minute, but you just thread it on to your line. Take your extra wide gap hook. I sometimes use an offset round bend, but extra wide gap. Tie it on. Take my worm. Thread it through. 1/4 inch or so. Make sure I'm centered when I pull it out. Run it up here over the eye of the hook. Turn it around. Measure. Hold my hook there. I pull it just a little tight and move it just a little forward because I want it kind of tight on there. Some people don't. That's fine. I like it just a hair tight. To expose it, I run it all the way through. Then I just pinch the end over. It's weedless. It hangs fairly straight. I gotta adjust that just a little bit. I gotta kind of twist it on there, but I don't have my glasses. Anyway, but I messed up. Well, hey, you didn't use that swivel, so I'm gonna get a chance to rehook it. After I've got the head of the worm on there, or whatever lure I'm using, I run that swivel on the other end back through, and you see what that does. It's right here. What that's going to do is it's going to keep you, when you hook a fish, from flinging that worm off. Your worm's going to last longer. Also protects the hook a little bit, gives it a little more noise. But man, that's a worm saver. I've caught 10, 12 fish on one worm since I've started using this. It works. Let me tell you, buddy, it works. And that's an old Roland Martin trick. Like I said, I'm going to give credit where credit's due. That's something I learned from watching a Roland Martin video here on YouTube. And he said he also, now there, that's not bad. That's pretty straight. He will also use super glue sometimes, hold it in place. But that swivel's a really neat trick. I use it no matter what I'm doing, flipping, pitching, whatever. If I got a weight on there and I've got a Texas rig, that's what I use. I'll even use it when I'm weightless. I'll even use it Carolina rig, things like that. I'll put that swivel on there because it just keeps them, when a fish comes, they got their mouth, they suck that whole thing into their mouth. But when you set the hook, it comes down to here. Well, there's quite a bit of pressure there on that worm. Well, it comes off like that and exposes the hook. But what happens a lot of times is it rips that piece right off of there. And you set the hook, and it's just hooked right here. And then they're flopping around and they fling it off. Or the other thing that happens, you got it rigged up. Fish comes along and they suck it in like this. Well, when they suck it in, this part peels back. And you catch them here and it's just flinging up here. Well, still, you've got it protected, you've got it held on real well. Another thing that happens is they grab it, you get them hooked, and all this is pulled down on the hook, and they're flinging and flopping, and it all slides up the line. Well, it keeps that from sliding up the line as well. Man, I am a believer. It works. I've got several bags of different size swivels, not just, and I don't use them for Carolina rigs that often. I use them for this right here. I've had people comment on that, look at it, and what is that for? I always say, that's a trick I learned from Roland Martin. Let me show you how it works. And let me tell you, my hook ratio has gone up tremendously by using that. The amount of worms I use has gone down tremendously by using that. Um, and he's also shows tricks where you flip the worm around on a straight tail worm, a Cinco, something like that. And you flip it around and bite the head off and rig it a little shorter and things like that. And those all work real well too. Get the most life out of a soft plastic bait. But let me tell you, that right there has been a huge money saver for me. My hook ratio's gone up. I'm not sure exactly why I hook more fish that way, but I think it's because the worm doesn't slide down and get in the way of the fish's mouth. So how many times have you set the hook, you give 8-10 reels and you're fighting the fish and then he's gone? And then you reel it in and that worm's all wadded up, shish kebabbed on the end of that hook. It won't happen like that. You're going to miss a fish every now and then. But I would say the way I've got that rigged, I hook at least 8, if not 9 out of 10 fish when I get a bite. Now, we'll go into this a little bit. You cast out. Some prefer to slowly drag. Some bounce. I'm usually a slow dragger along the bottom. But you feel that boop, 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 boop on the end of your line. Reel in the slack. You make sure that the fish is on there, and once you get that slack, you're gonna tighten it up just a little bit, and you're gonna feel that bump. Then I drop about 5-6 inches. I just drop that nose, put some slack in the line. I reel up my slack. I feel that I've got the fish, but I'm not keeping constant tension. I'm reeling on slack line. Then I tighten it up just a little bit. Make sure the fish is still there. Watching the line, watch it move a little bit. Drop down about 6 inches, and you're setting the hook on slack line. So it's feel it, drop it just a little bit, and break its neck. Set that hook like you're trying to break your rod in half. Every now and then, you're going to snap a tip because you're going to feel it, and you're going to think it's a fish, and you're going to be setting the hook into a log or something. I've only done it once in 20 years, set the hook like that and busted a rod. But it happens. That's why you inspect your rod and make sure there's no cracks in it, anything like that. But you set that hook like you want to cross that fish's eyes. And if that fish is only a few foot off the bank or something like that, and it weighs less than a pound, when you set that hook, you're going to fling that thing up over your head, onto the other side of the boat, up onto the bank, whatever it is. My opinion is, if you fling a 12-inch fish up over your head, you set the hook hard enough. If the fish bit right there at the boat or at the bank, and it's a 12-inch fish, and you set the hook and you didn't rip him out of the water, you didn't set the hook hard enough. Again, that's my personal opinion, but if you're not ripping small fish out of the water when they're close, you're not setting the hook hard enough. Because what you want to do is drive that thing through their jawbone or up through their lip, whatever. How many fish you get in, and you don't even have it to the barb. But when you use a heavy rod like that, you reel down, you whammo, and you set that hook, and you reel it in, you got a good sharp hook, and you got them right in the corner of the mouth, and you got it all the way through its jaw, that fish ain't going nowhere. Now, you're not always going to drive them through their jaw, don't get me wrong. You're going to catch them in the lip, you're going to catch them in the upper lip, you're going to catch them in the lower lip, etc., etc. But just as hard as you can, wham! You give it a half-hearted hook set, you're going to lose a lot of fish. They're just not going to stay pinned. Now, you may every now and then rip one out of fish's mouth. That's why I expose them. I run it all the way through and just barely cover the tip. And even when I'm flipping and pitching, that's how I do it. Now, I do have to break off some every now and then lures because I get them snagged. Don't get me wrong. Some people prefer a straight shanked hook for that, and they hide it in the plastic. I like my hook ratios. I don't mind ripping a hook off every now and then, breaking a hook off every now and then, getting snagged. But I don't like losing fish. So 99 times out of 100, I'm going to have that extra wide gap. I'm going to have it exposed. I'm going to have it rigged just exactly the way I showed you. And buddy, when you give them just a little bit and wham! Now, sometimes you're reeling down the slack and you're tightening it up, you're getting ready to drag, and that's when you feel the bite. What I do is I just instantly put a little bit of a belly in my line and set the hook. So there's some tips, some tricks. Hope you found it useful. Remember, Christ is King. I love y'all. Subscribe, like, share with your friends. This is Veteran Outdoorsman signing off.